Welcome once again to the official Colorado Sports Hall of Fame podcast. I'm Dave Plati.
And I'm Jim Saccomano, and we're your co-hosts now with 90 years of experience working in Colorado sports. Myself with the Denver Broncos and Dave with the CU Buffaloes. And at one time, both of us with the Denver Bears, among our many other experiences.
This week, we are continuing our reveal of 150 significant moments, including an eventual ranking of the top 50 in state of Colorado sports history as we celebrate the state's 150th birthday this coming August 1st. That's the date that Colorado was admitted to the Union in 1876 as the 38th state. A veteran committee with 350 combined years of covering and or working in sports in the state are selecting those moments that we will count down at the rate of 5 per week and then daily for the top 10 come the end of July.
We've already covered numbers 101 through 150 in our last 10 podcasts. So this week, we are revealing numbers 96 to 100. As we count down, a reminder that all are being archived at the Colorado Sports Hall of Fame website, along with all our podcasts. Go to coloradosports.org, click on the menu bar, and then Top 150 Moments or Podcasts.
But first, we are revisiting other moments in Colorado sports history that aren't in our top 150, often in or around the date of our podcast. Over 1,975 have now been identified, all chronologically signifying their importance at the time. We are remembering those that had significant impact on the state's sports scene. For example,
on March 17th, 1989, St. Patrick's Day, Colorado State had lost in the WAC championship game, but the regular season champs were still a 10 seed in the NCAA tournament. Facing 7 seed Florida, the Rams defense smothered the Gators in a 68-46 blowout, with Joel Tribblehorn leading the way with 20 points, making 4 of 6 3-pointers, by the way. Florida shot just 39% from the floor and were forced into 18 turnovers. Number 9, Syracuse beat the Rams in the second round, 65-50.
Well, let's zoom ahead to June 18th, 2023, which was Father's Day. Wyndham Clark became the third Colorado high school alum from Valor Christian to win the U.S. Open as he turned in a 10 under par performance, shooting 64, 67, 69, 70, 270 in all at Los Angeles Country Club, defeating Rory McIlroy by 1 shot. He joined Hale Irwin of Boulder High School and Steve Jones of Yuma High School as Colorado high schoolers to win golf's signature event. However, Wyndham was the only one of the 3 born in the state. He was born in Denver.
And on another St. Patty's Day in 1969, Colorado sophomore forward Cliff Mealy was the first Buffalo to be named the Big 8 Conference's Player of the Year. He averaged 23.8 points, 24.9 in league games, and 12.0 rebounds per game, leading CU to a 21-7 record and a berth into the NCAA tournament, its last until 1997. CU's Sox Walseth is named the league's Coach of the Year for the 4th time.
Now, on June 26, 2003, the Denver Nuggets, matching the highest pick they had had to date in the NBA draft, which was 3rd overall, selected forward Carmelo Anthony of the NCAA champion Syracuse Orangemen. This is fitting because obviously March Madness is starting this week. The Nuggets had tied for the worst record in the league, 17-65, but the addition of Melo turned the franchise's fortunes around as Denver finished his rookie season with a 43-39 record and made the playoffs for the first time in 9 years, and the Nuggets would make the postseason for the next 10 years. And now, a message from our newest sponsor.
This is Mark Johnson, voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. As we count down the greatest moments in Colorado sports history, it's worth remembering that great sports moments don't just happen. They're built on preparation, resilience, and staying healthy. And in Colorado, a great sports moment can mean something different to everyone, from Hall of Fame athletes to anyone who simply wants to keep moving. Whether you're chasing championships, personal bests, or just a pain-free morning run, the team at CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center delivers exceptional sports medicine care, from prevention and recovery to performance. Founded right here in Boulder, the CU Sports Medicine and Performance Center brings together CU medicine providers and Boulder community health clinicians to provide comprehensive care that's close to home and rooted in the community they serve. Learn more at cusportsmedicinecenter.com. One of the great.
And now, on with the countdown.
Greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 100.
On August 22nd, 1948, Ben Hogan won the Denver Open at Wellshire Golf Course, defeating Fred Haas Jr. by one stroke. His 18 under par 270 scorecard earned him all of $2,150 at the time. It was his sixth straight win on the PGA Tour, the second longest streak at the time, and still tied for the third longest to this day, and not matched until 2000 by Tiger Woods. Wellshire opened in August 1926 and will celebrate its 100th anniversary this summer. Its history includes the longest active continuous tournament in Colorado. That's the Wellshire Four-Ball. Arnold Palmer finishing third in the 58 Denver Open, 2 years before he returned to the state to win the U.S. Open, and Bill Wright winning the 1959 Public Links title, the first African-American to win a major golf tournament.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 99.
On December 14th, 1975, Floyd Little capped his 9-year pro career by leading Denver to a 25-10 win over Philadelphia in his final home game. After the Eagles tied the game at 10-10 in the third quarter, he scored what proved to be the winning points with the 66-yard touchdown reception on a screen pass from Steve Ramsey. He then scored the final points of the game on a 2-yard TD run with 1:57 to play, finishing the game with 56 yards on 19 carries and 5 receptions for 94 yards. Fans who braved the 15-degree temperatures to watch the NFL's 7th all-time leading rusher in his final home appearance gave him standing ovations every time he left the field and carried him off as he blew kisses to the spectators in Mile High Stadium's fabled South Stands.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 98.
We're going back to October 29th, 1930. Ken Pearson scored a national high school record that still stands today, 12 rushing touchdowns in Hugo's 176-6 win over Nevada at home. The 12 TDs remain a state record and tied for the second most in the history of schoolboy football nationally. The 182 combined points were the most in a Colorado prep game at the time, and almost a century later is still second. The margin of victory is still first. Hugo scored over 100 points 2 other times that season, defeating Flagler 106-0 and Burlington 104-0. Pearson died in 2008 at the age of 96.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 97.
On January 30th, 2025, the National Women's Soccer League, NWSL, awarded an expansion franchise to Denver, the league's 16th franchise that would begin play in 2026. The expansion fee was $110 million, and the team was officially named Denver Summit FC. It made its debut on schedule this past Saturday, dropping a 2-1 decision to Bay FC at PayPal Park in San Jose. Melissa Kostler scored the first goal in franchise history in the 20th minute that tied the game at 1-1.
One of the greatest moments in Colorado sports history. Number 96.
On December 6, 2025, Cherry Creek sprinted to a 28-0 lead and went on to defeat Ralston Valley 56-28, giving head coach Dave Logan his 13th state championship, his 6th with the Bruins. The only coach to win titles at 4 different schools, no one else has more than 2, he moved into a tie for 29th nationally. He added to his winningest total in state of Colorado, as earlier in the decade he passed Lyman's Floyd Gaskill, who had won 10. Logan's 355 wins are second all-time in the state, as is his .833 winning percentage, through the 25 season.
At this time, we want to welcome back a true jack of all trades and master of all, the voice of the Denver Broncos, the head coach of Cherry Creek, and longtime Denver Sports Talk host, Dave Logan. Welcome, Dave.
And I'd like to welcome Dave, too. Welcome, Dave.
Guys.
Dave, this is Jim. You won your 13th state title in December. It sounds like a fantasy, except it's real. What made you get into coaching? Was it a long-time desire, or was it something that an opportunity came along and just presented itself? And maybe talk about your father's youth coaching experience.
Sure. Yeah, Jim. And you and I have talked about that. My dad was a youth coach for teams that I was on in football and basketball. And my mom and dad always talked about if you have a chance to work with kids in some capacity, you should always do that. You should always invest in kids. And so I always had that in the back of my mind, honestly. And then the job opened at Golden High School back in, that would have been 1992. And I applied for it and actually got the job, and spent the next 3 or 4 days calling people that I wanted to put on the staff, people that would help me coaching. And then I got a call from the athletic director 4 days later, and he said, "Hey, we're going to go. We want to bring a veteran head coach on, a guy that has experience." And I said, that'll be great, because it'll give me somebody that I can bounce things off of and really learn from. I said, what do you want him to coach? And they said, well, we want him to be the head coach. So I guess I got fired, I suppose, but I really didn't do anything except try to hire a staff in the first 4 days. And Eddie Kinst became the next head coach, and Eddie really was a quality head coach in high school for a long time at several schools here in the metro area. So the following year, my middle school football coach reached out, and this was probably in May, and said, "Hey, the Arvada West job just came open. I think you should apply." And I said, "Coach, that's a big. I mean, the Golden job was a 4A job. The Arvada West job was a 5A job." And he said, "No, if you do, I'll help you. I'll coach running backs, so forth and so on." So I applied, and that was after Brian McGregor, who was really an outstanding coach. He was there for 27 years, and he left at a time that I think he wanted one of his two coordinators to be the next head coach. And so most of the capable and quality head coaches, guys that had head coaching responsibility, had already latched on, to coach, either staying at their school or taking open jobs. So there were 3 guys that applied for the job, got the job in the first part of June, and then tried to put together an offense and a defense and figure out what I was doing. But the first guy I hired was my middle school football coach. He was my running backs coach for the first 7 years of my career.
I just realized a very interesting parallel. So you were head coach technically at Golden for 4 days. Your college baseball coach, Irv Brown, was our basketball head coach for 4 days. Did you ever remember that story?
No, I don't. Maybe now that you said that, Dave, maybe I remember that a little bit. Was that after Sox?
Yeah. Eddie had wanted to talk to Irv Brown about making him head basketball coach. And Irv was doing what you were doing, trying to assemble staff. And then 4 days later, they came back and said, "No, we need to go somebody with basketball experience as a coach." So that's kind of an interesting parallel that just popped in my head, which, that's so me. I'm so weird.
Yeah.
At any rate,
I'm sure Irv would have been good at it.
Oh, sure he would have. So anyway, you've won at 4 schools: Arvada West, Chatfield, Mullen, and Cherry Creek. 7 at the ladder, or 6 at the ladder. Was it 6 or 7 at Creek now?
7.
7,
Oh,
I think.
I'm not yeah, it sounds right. One at A West, one at Chatfield. I think it's 4. I think it's 4 at Mullen, and the rest at Creek.
The 7 at Creek. So
7.
imagine all are very special in some way or another, but do any stand out for a reason we might not realize?
Well, I mean, I think what you said is so true. They're all unique because your cast changes a lot from year to year. The first one at Arvada West will always hold a special place in my heart. We'd gone to the state championship in '96, the year before, and ironically played Cherry Creek. And I remember because Rocky Martin, who was a great, great player at CU, linebacker, Rocky at that point was the defensive coordinator of Cherry Creek. And I would, I always enjoyed sort of the history of football and looking back and reading on people and sort of what they went through. And Rocky had made a comment that week that he thought that was the best defense in the history of Cherry Creek. And so I knew that if Rocky said that I mean, they were really good. They were loaded. And we had scored and I think cut the lead to 8 with about, 3 minutes to go, but we just could never get Darnell McDonald stopped. Darnell, wound up getting a football scholarship to Texas as a running back. That tells you how good he was. He went, most obviously, and played professional baseball for, 17 or 18 years, but just a phenomenal running back. And he hit a long run on us and we lost. So the next year, we were ranked number 1 going in, but we didn't get off to a good start. We were 3-2 after 5 games. And so there were challenges, obviously. There were challenges every single year, but we were able to navigate sort of through those challenges. We lost a regular season game at Mullen, and we lost a regular season game to Bear Creek. And then ironically, the first round of the playoffs, we went to Mullen and found a way to win. And then we played Bear Creek in the state championship. They were unbeaten at that time, and we found a way to squeak out a victory there. So that season will always hold a special place for me because it was the first time. But honestly, every single year, I think, and it doesn't have to be a state championship year. I mean, every single year has its own challenges, has its own peaks and some valleys and surprises, and just the interaction with young men and the coaches. I've had a lot of coaches that have stayed with me for a long, long time. So yeah, that would be how I'd categorize that. It doesn't have to be a state championship year to create some just fantastic memories that'll carry you for the rest of your life.
Dave, what do you enjoy the most about coaching?
I think it is, Jim. I think it's just a great opportunity to engage in young people and to do everything I possibly can to put them in the best possible scenario, best possible condition for them to be successful. And I think it gives you a chance as a high school coach to see guys as they get older and they gain maturity and they gain strength and they gain size, they gain understanding and maybe even gain some love of the game, which I think is so important. It gives me a chance to really, when they're done, step back and appreciate that journey that they've encountered for 4 years or 3 years, however long that they've played. And have we as a staff and have I individually done a good job of impacting that player individually, right? Have we taught them some life lessons? Have we prepared them for what I know they're going to encounter at the next level for those that want to go on or are good enough to go on and play in college, play football? Have we put them in a good position academically to where they understand, that there's a priority here. Football's really important, but it's not as important as the academic side of that. Sometimes that's a steep learning curve for kids and for parents, to tell you the truth nowadays. But I just love being around these young guys that are willing to prepare to the extent that I know you have to be. These guys are willing to work that hard. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but it does, I think, give you the best chance to win.
By the way, full disclosure, Dave is one of our sports veterans helping to rank the top 50 moments in state history. And back to coaching, and we've discussed this in the press box before, the changes in college sports, particularly in football and basketball, they really are hurting the high school athlete, aren't they?
I think in a lot of cases they are. I've had so many college coaches. I mean, we had, I think it was 70 some odd colleges come through here this spring, college coaches, and you have a lot of conversation because they have more time to interact this time of year. And I think the portal in particular in college, let's just say football, has drastically impacted and in a negative way, high school football recruiting. Now your elite kids, they're still going to get recruited because, they either, and there's so many things I think that go into college recruiting. It's your size and speed, how you look in the hoof, and how do you look when the coaches have a chance to watch your film? How do you conduct yourself when they interact with you in a coach's office? But those kids, and it's rare to have, the majority of players you coach are not in that category. Those kids are going to get recruited no matter what happens in the college portal. But the lion's share of kids that we find not only here at Creek, but at other schools in this state are really good high school football players. And they might be, an FCS. Is it FCS or FBS? I get them. FCS is like Division I AA used to be, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, they might be FCS. I mean, they might go play at Montana State, or UNC, Northern Colorado. You got to be a good football player to go play there. But those guys are not being recruited nearly as aggressively as we saw prior to the portal being instituted in college football. And I've had so many college coaches that just say, Dave, I mean, he's a good looking kid, but I can find, there are 7,500 college players in the portal. I can go find a kid that has been at a university that has had, a year to prepare, a year to get in the weight room, work on his body from a nutrition standpoint. They're just ahead of a lot of these high school kids. So I don't have an answer for it in terms of the remedy, but without a doubt, and I tell parents all the time, your son 10 years ago would have been a no-brainer to get a scholarship, if not a full scholarship, at least a partial scholarship. Nowadays, that's not the case.
That's a shame. Dave, you had a stellar 8-year career with the Cleveland Browns. What fond memories do you have of your days in Cleveland, and what was it like playing home games off Lake Erie in December?
Yeah, I'd never been east of Kansas when I got drafted, so I had no idea. I had no idea about where Cleveland was or where the state of Ohio was. I played in the college all-star game. I actually broke my ankle in CU basketball prior to the NFL draft, and so I went to the college All-Star game. I really wasn't completely healthy, but I wanted to play. That was the last. It turned out to be the last college All-Star game ever played. And Ara Parsegan was the head coach, and so the first round pick, and I was the second pick for the Browns. Mike Pruitt was the first round pick, running back out of Purdue. We were both in that college All-Star game, so we got to training camp about 2 weeks later than every other rookie got there, and I mean, it was eye-opening, to tell you the truth. It it was intimidating a little bit. But I think when I look back at my career, the fans in Cleveland remind me of the fans in Denver. They are football savvy, football knowledgeable. They know good football, and conversely, they know what's not good football. And they have such a love, such a like a deep-rooted affection for that home team. And in Cleveland's case, you could just, I'm playing at the old Municipal Stadium. There was just a roar to that crowd that was just different than any of the stadium that I actually played in. So, there were good and bad times, but developed real bonds with teammates, guys that I still stay in touch with. And I look at that time of my life in a favorable way. I was really happy and proud to, at that point, be a Cleveland Brown.
Wasn't that All-Star game the one that was canceled in the second half due to rain or lightning or something?
Yeah, it was. I'd never seen rain that hard. I mean, we literally had people that were body surfing on the turf and would go like from the hash mark all the way to the opposite sideline, almost like they were coming downhill, but they just tuck themselves in a ball, or they'd chest slide and put their arms up, and they would slide all the way across the field. It was so wet, and I think that the Steelers were just beating the dog out of us too. I think it was like 24-0 or something like that. But I don't think anybody was unhappy that the game was canceled. Lightning and unbelievably hard rain, and they just decided at that point, not at that point, but they decided not to bring the game back the next year.
So you finished your career with the Broncos. How exactly did that come about? You played in 4 games, and according to Pro Football Reference, you were targeted 5 times when you returned to Cleveland in September, and the Broncos won 24-14. Was John helping you for a little payback?
Well, in that Cleveland game, so Mike Shanahan was my receiver coach. That was Mike's first year in the NFL. He picked me up to the airport when I got traded. And so you develop. I mean, in the NFL, you've got a really close relationship with your receiver coach, because you interact with him a lot more than you do the head coach or even the offensive coordinator. So Mike was a guy that I saw every single day at work and in the meetings. And Mike came to me before we played the Browns and said, "Hey, Dan wants to move you inside at an H-back. Are you up for the challenge, or is that good?" I said, "Hey, if it'll get me on the field, I'll do whatever," right? Because I was really frustrated. I wasn't getting a lot of playing time, and I just didn't have a good feel about how things were going. So I also had never played inside in my entire career. So to move from playing a long time outside as a wide receiver now to lining up in a 3-point stance. So there was a play call in that game, and there was a package. It was a limited package that when I went in, the handful of plays that I had to know what I was doing. So there was one particular play that I'm lined up, and Chip Banks, who had been my teammate the previous year in Cleveland, was lined up over me. Chip really was sort of out of the Lawrence Taylor mold. Big, 250-pound outside linebacker, very athletic, played at USC. And I remember lining up in a 3-point stance, and looking up, and Chip is in the 2-point stance. And he actually, before the ball snapped, said, "Lugs, what are you doing in here?" And I thought it was a fitting question. And so I said, "I don't know." So John Elway was the quarterback. And as he's barking the signals, he says something that told me, like, okay, he's just checked and I've got to stay in and block. At least I thought that's what it was. So all of a sudden I'm thinking, there's panic with me. I was a big, strong wide receiver, but I was a 230-pound wide receiver blocking a guy that was used to taking on tight ends and tackles. So I stayed in. I tried to grab Chip, and basically Chip just kind of walked me all the way back, just forklifted me off the ground and threw me into John Elway. So I don't remember the exact plays in terms of the completions, but that little experiment did not. And now I think it had been put to me like, listen, we're going to move you inside, and this has to work. If this doesn't work, we're probably going to have to let you go. I think then I would have had a different mindset, but that's not really what Dan didn't say anything to me, but that's not really had it been sort of laid out to me. And it was something that I didn't do a good job with.
I remember that I go in on a Tuesday and I said, "Well, what's going on, Dan?" He had nothing much. I said, "Well, what do you got planned today? Anything?" We're just going to cut Dave Logan. And I said, "Oh, that's going to be a really bad thing, Dan." And he said, "Oh, no, that'll be fine. That'll be fine." I said, "Oh, that's going to be a really bad thing, Dan." Anyway, he did. Compliments to you. You didn't inflict any physical damage on him, but you retired. How did you get into sports talk? You're in something like your 40th year now. And by the way, you have the unique situation. A lot of ex-players become color guys in their broadcasts. Not many go from the color chair to the play-by-play chair. It's fewer than 5. And Dave, you are among those 5. And I think the world of you, as you know. But how did you get involved in sports talk?
Yeah, you know what, Jim? I'll go back to the day you referred to with Dan. The last game of my career, just briefly, we played the Chiefs at home. Mike had come to me in the locker room and said, "You're going to be the 5th wide receiver," which meant that I had been basically demoted from 4 to 5. I said, "Well, how did that happen?" Like during the week, and Mike said, "Dan." I said, "Okay." So went into the game already with the red ass, and then on a pass, which turned out to be the only pass I ever caught from John. I couldn't get an inside release on the defensive back. And anyway, on a third, I think it was like 3rd and 8, I caught a ball for like 5 or 4. Anyway, didn't get the first down. And when I came to the sideline, Dan was not happy with me. And so he was letting me have it. I stood there and tried to explain to him a little bit about, he had hard inside leverage. I couldn't get it, and he was, Dan, as you guys know, Dan could have that ability to light you up from time to time. He was very, very passionate about it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. I'm going to take what he has. And when I thought he was done, I went back to the sidelines and sat down. And probably 30 seconds later, he came pulling his cord back. They didn't have wireless headphones at the time. And then he started in again in terms of just let me have it. And at that point, I said something to him that assuredly, and I've told this story not a lot, but assuredly that will get you cut. And I said it to him. And so I knew when I said that my time was limited, and I got the call on Tuesday morning to show up early that morning, and that was the end of that. So in reference to your question, I honestly left the Broncos facility. I never ever listened to talk radio ever. I was a music guy. I loved music, but I happened upon Irv and Joe doing a talk show later that day. and they were talking sports. So I remember thinking, what am I going to do? I had a chance to sign with Seattle, and I didn't want to do that. So I called Irv, I don't remember, it was, that week or a week later, whatever. And he said, what are you going to do? I said, I really don't know. So I was going to study, actually was studying to take the test to work for New York Life. My dad had been, the last few years of his life, had been an estate planner, and enjoyed talking to people. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to follow his footsteps. And Irv said, why don't you come in and do a talk show? So I did, and wound up talking about sports for an hour. He came in and said, hey, the boss loves you, and we want you to start working with us in the afternoon. No money, can't pay any money, but we can give you a couple of minutes to sell. So ironically, for the first 6 months of my sports talk career, I made like $682. I sold one spot to a men's clothier. And after 6 months, I said to Irv, I've got a baby, and he said, let me go in and talk to the boss. And he comes back, he says, the boss loves you, and I got you $1,000 a month. I said, okay, all right. So I worked the next year for $1,000 a month. So the first 18 months of my sports talk career, I made $12,682. So, but I enjoyed it. I always was a sports geek. I loved baseball and football, and I loved basketball. And so, I just enjoyed having a chance, and I couldn't have picked two better guys to break in with than Irv Brown and Joe Williams. We've lost Irv, obviously. Joe is still one of my great friends. I talk to him a lot. He's retired now, but they brought me along and taught me the ropes for sure.
You spilled over into TV rather quickly, and you did CU games for a number of years. You did two of our most memorable games on KCNC, the fifth down game at Missouri and what turned out to be Coach Mack's last game against Iowa State. I believe you have stories about both, right?
Wow. The Missouri game, I'm doing the game. I worked with Ron Zappolo, and I worked with the late Les Shapiro. I think in that game I'm working with Les. But the ironic thing about it is I actually thought that on fourth down they spiked the ball. And in my mind, I'm looking at the scoreboard, and the scoreboard says, no, Dave, that's not right. I look at the down marker. No, that's not right. So I didn't say anything on the air. I'm thinking, yeah, I've got to be losing my mind because they've had an extra down. So, then they score, the Buffs score, and all hell breaks loose. And it was an interesting time for sure. But it's one of those times as a young, relatively inexperienced TV analyst at that point, I wanted to say, hey, wait a minute, this is fourth down. They can't spike the ball here, but I could not bring myself to say it because the down in the Jumbotron said otherwise. So that's what I remember most about that game. The Iowa State game, was that the game that they had the blizzard?
It had snowed the day before, and we had cleared the stadium of snow, but it kept about 8,000 fans away. That was Rashawn's 2,000-yard run. Cordell set the Big 8 total offense record, but Mack announced after the game he was resigning. And I believe you guys left the air. Were you on the highway, and you guys had to turn around and come back?
Yeah, I'm glad you jogged my memory. We did. I was completely shocked. I had not heard any sort of indication that anything like that was in the wind. I think I may have interviewed Mac after that game, but I just remember wondering if he was okay physically, if there was some sort of medical issue. It just it so struck me out of the blue because Mac was, relatively young at the time. One other Mac story. I remember covering the game, and I think it was for either Channel 4 or Channel 9. I freelanced for both of those stations at one point, and covering the CSU opener. And it was the year the CSU came in and beat them. Steve Bartolo had a great game, and I had to ask. I was so devastated for the Buffs, and here I have to ask Mac questions after the game on camera, and he, it's funny. I think he could tell my angst, and he looked at me before we started the interview and said, "Dave, it's okay. Just ask whatever you need to ask. It's okay." And it so calmed me down because, I felt devastated for him and the Buffs. We became close really after their 1-win season. And Mac had Joe and I up a couple times and spoke to the team. And, it just, once you got to know him and what he was about, I just always pulled for Bill McCartney and the Buffs at that point. And man, to lose that game, the season opener, in such a big way was devastating.
Of course, we had Joe on earlier in the year on our podcast talking about the history of sports talk, and he brought up a certain game later that year where you guys still claim that I tossed you out of the press box.
Yeah. Well, I think we claim it because it's true.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
It's absolutely true. We, Joe and I went up to the Nebraska game, the 86 game.
Yep.
And Nebraska had beaten CU. I don't know now. Was it 20 years in a row? They'd beaten them a lot of years consecutively. And
18.
so the Buffs, we knew the Buffs had a puncher's chance. But the Buffs were going north, and so we're up in the press box so you can see things develop. And they run the reverse to Jeff Campbell, and you could tell if the pitch got to Campbell that there was nobody on the west side of the field from a defensive perspective, and he hits the side. And so when I see him catch it, I stand up and start hollering yes and go. And so we're moving down the press box towards the north end zone as Soup sort of hit stride. And the last thing I remember as we got to the door was, "And both of you can get out." And so we watched the remainder of the game, and Dave was doing the right thing. You have to have a certain decorum in the press box, and I get that. But that was too big a play for us not to be excited about. And so we watched the rest of it out from the balcony and just enjoyed the greatness of the day.
I always remembered the Nebraska people would get upset if there was a peep of cheering in our press box. And their SID came to me one time, "You can't have this happen here." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. When you guys score in your games, it's like we're in the stands in your press box. Leave me alone."
I can, as an observer in the CU press box, Dave Plati had a certain flair. He was like an umpire throwing a guy out of a game. Oh, he loved it. He was very, very vocal and physical about it, and it was great to see. Hey, Dave, we can't have you on without mentioning that you're one of just 2 athletes that were drafted by Major League Baseball, the NFL, and the NBA. No internet or cable TV back in the day. How did you find out about each? And in the end, why did you select football over baseball and basketball?
Yeah, Jim, I think there may be a handful of guys now, but I found out about the baseball draft when I was in high school, and we had sent because at that point, if you signed a major league contract with the team, you could not play any sport in college. So had I signed, I was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds when I was senior at Weaver's High School. Had I signed that contract, I couldn't have played football and basketball at the University of Colorado. So we let everybody know, listen, we're going to college. We intend to, play sports there, whatever. So, but the Reds drafted me late. They drafted me as a shortstop, and that was at the time of the Big Red Machine. They were a juggernaut, and the shortstop was Davey Concepcion. So I don't necessarily think he was in any grave danger of losing his job to this young yokel from Wheat Ridge. But so then the football and the basketball thing, like I said earlier, I broke my ankle playing basketball for CU. Not long before the NFL draft. So we had surgery and had to write letters to all the various NFL teams that the surgery was successful. But I think it definitely hurt. It hurt my draft status because I wound up going in the third round to the Browns, but I wasn't even completely healthy when the draft took place. The NBA draft, it was kind of an unusual story. We played my senior year. I didn't play my sophomore year, maybe freshman year. The Buffs went to I think it was the Gator Bowl, and played Auburn. I had made the varsity team as a receiver, kind of a backup wide receiver, but I didn't go with them to play in that bowl game because I went right to basketball. And then we weren't in a bowl game my sophomore, junior year. So my senior year, we have a really good year, and we play the Blue Bonnet Bowl. We're 9-2. We're going to play the University of Texas, so I'm playing. The Buffs are going to the holiday tournament, the Big 8 tournament in Kansas City, the Buffs basketball team. So we lose to Texas. I wound up catching a touchdown pass in that game, and we've got a sizable halftime lead. Anyway, Earl Campbell and company came back and beat us. So I caught a plane the next day, flew to Kansas City. I think that was Sunday, and I believe we played Kansas State on Monday. And Coach Walseth had said to me, "Listen, I'm not going. You're not obviously going to start. I'm not even sure I'm going to play yet." So, but as it turned out, I don't know the circumstances of the game, but I got in the game relatively early, and it was one of those games where you haven't touched the basketball, obviously during football season, but just the feel of the ball just felt, normal to me, and everything I shot was going to go in. So I had 20-something in that game against Kansas State, and Larry Staverman, who was the GM of the Kansas City Kings at the time, happened to be at that game, and talked to me and said, we're going to draft you. But I want to talk to you about going back to CU, and because I'd redshirted in basketball one year due to a football injury. I missed the entire basketball season. So I could have gone back and played another year of basketball at CU. He wanted me to do that without football as a precursor. And so I actually thought about that, because I really thought, as a kid, I thought my future might be in basketball. But I just, I'm not even sure what was involved in the decision, except I was drafted relatively high in the NFL and just decided to go play football.
I never realized that story, because you would have been reunited with Scott Wedman on the Kings.
Right. That's right. Tiny Archibald. They actually had a pretty good team. Scotty was such a great player. You're talking about a guy that he's an all-time great from the University of Colorado. Could shoot it, went on and had a significant role on those Celtics teams coming off the bench. Scott Wedman was a terrific basketball player, great friend of mine. He got traded to the Cavaliers, ironically, in Cleveland at the same time that I was with the Browns. So we got to hook back up there in Cleveland and spend some time together.
So Dave, going back to what Jim had asked you about how you found these things out, nowadays with the NFL draft, it's 3 days of television. The kids are in New York, but I think you told me, didn't a coach get you out of class to tell you had been drafted?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the class. I can't remember which class I was in, but I was pulled out of class by one of the coaches. I want to say it was Les Steckel, but I might be wrong there. And they told me, he said, "Hey, you got to get back to your dorm room. You've been drafted by the Cleveland Browns." So honestly, I'd never been east of Kansas. And I knew Cleveland. The funny thing about it is I'd gone to one Bronco game the year before, my senior year at CU, and they played the Browns. And the Browns are just awful. I mean, I think they won 3 games the entire year. So I hustled back to the dorm room, and the phone rings, and somebody asked for me, and the lady said, "Would you please stand by for Mr. Art Modell of the Cleveland Browns?" And hey, listen, my career in Cleveland turned out to go pretty well, but my heart sunk really because I had really hoped that I was going to get drafted by the Broncos and that things would work out and I could stay home and but it didn't, and everything happens for a reason. But yeah, things have changed a little bit nowadays in terms of how the guys are notified.
And you technically you were a little bit east of Kansas when you played a road game at Missouri.
Good to know. That's I guess that's true. I guess that's true.
Yeah, and Ames is north of Kansas City, so that's on a parallel. So you're good there. So finally, Dave, if this isn't putting you on the spot, how much longer you want to keep coaching and calling Bronco games? Have you given it any thought, or are you just going year to year?
No, I mean I really enjoy both of those things. I think it was Jim had mentioned earlier in terms of your broadcasting career. I mean, if former players normally, whether you say they get pigeonholed or whether you say they get opportunity, the opportunity for former players is to do color, is to analyze games. And I think the first, through 95, so the first 6 years of my career, I did the color analyst role with Larry Zimmer calling Broncos games. And I really enjoyed that. It allowed me to, I called the game basically as I would sit and look at tape as a player, and even as a coach, just trying to figure out based on things I would see what exactly was going to happen in that play, maybe a little bit before it happened. But when they came to me and said, "Hey, we want to move you over and do the play-by-play," I initially thought they were kidding. There's Lee Larson, who was my boss at the time, and I kind of chuckled. And then I realized he wasn't kidding. So, I was excited about the opportunity. I was very nervous about it. I didn't want to ever get into something that I couldn't excel at. And so I went back and listened to a few play-by-play styles. I was a big fan of Bob Martin growing up, obviously here in Denver. And Bob, was economic in his descriptions. But I think what you have to do is you've got to go in and sort of develop your own style. As long as you can be accurate in how you describe things. And I always wanted that guy that was maybe working in the garage that couldn't get to a Broncos game, that was listening to the game on radio. I wanted him to be able to picture the game in his mind based on how I described who was where and what exactly was going on. And so I think, this will be, I'm not even sure what year this will be, 30, whatever it is, 6 maybe, coming up. I enjoy it very much. I would probably leave a year early in both high school coaching and the play-by-play. I would not want to be a guy who stayed and then the powers to be had to sort of gingerly walk around like, okay, how can we, maneuver this and do it the right way? Because this guy is earned so much. I don't want to be that guy, but I still feel good. So as long as God blesses me with good health, physically and mentally, and then I'm good to go for the foreseeable future.
Dave, when you're better than the powers that be, that counts for something. And you're better than the powers that be, or think they be.
Well, I appreciate that, Jim. I do. I can tell you this: both of those. We've talked about high school coaching and being the play-by-play voice of Broncos. Both of those jobs mean a lot to me. I mean, they really do. They matter to me, and how I go about both of those jobs matter to me, and the final result. So when you've done something for a long time, you want to make sure that you can put the effort and in some cases, intensity, the pride, all the things that I think make anybody successful at whatever job we're talking about. You've got to be honest with yourself, and you got to have that level of expectation that you either meet or you don't meet. So as long as I feel that way about them, then I think I want to continue and just ride this thing out.
I've worked with 27 years as a talent stats guy, and I've done stats for a lot of play-by-play guys. I got to tell the public out there is half the time I don't have to tell Dave the yardage of a play. He knows it in his head. And there are other guys I've worked for. I need to tell him that the gain was 2 or 3 yards. But sometimes Dave will go 17-yard game before I can tell you that in your earphone. Well, Dave, we want to thank you for taking the time out to join our podcast today. We've really enjoyed it, and I think we found out quite a few things that nobody knew.
Well, it's always it's great to catch up with you. I've known both of you for well over 25 years. Admire both of you in terms of what you guys have accomplished. And anytime you guys want to talk about sports or anything else, you know where I am.
David, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you, guys.
Well, once again, we hope you are enjoying our podcast. Keep spreading the word. We want to thank our sponsors, Pasta J's of Boulder. They have just reopened after a 2-week remodeling session. CU Sports Medicine, a new sponsor, and Tim Simmons of Colorado Collegiate Chronicle. And Mark Johnson for introducing each moment's number.
That's a wrap on our 20th podcast. Tune in next week for the next reveal of our state's top 150 moments. We hope that you're enjoying our reminiscing with our Colorado Sports Hall of Fame guests, as well as our trips down memory lane in the state's sports history. A reminder that the Hall offers tours of its museum, as well as Empower Field and Mile High Stadium, and that the class for 2026 will be inducted on April 16th at the Hilton City Center in downtown Denver. Keep spreading the word on our podcasts. We hope that you like them as well as we do.